Doom and Doom 2, the forefathers of the FPS genre, with the exception of Wolfenstein 3D. There's not much you can say about id Software's seminal shooters that hasn't been said by countless others before. All for good reasons, of course, because both Doom and Doom 2 are games that hold up extremely well to this very day, with their breakneck pace and simple yet effective action that never fails to satisfy. And with its almost immediate popularity, the games, mostly the original, were ported to just about every console imaginable, and at this point have been ported to nearly every electronic device known to man, dolphin, and probably extraterrestrials. There's something so wrong, yet so right about a game focused on a man murdering demons being played on a pregnancy test.
You're terminated, fucker.
Anyways, one of these ports is notorious amidst Doom fans as standing out amongst the rest, and it is none other than the PlayStation Custom Edition of Doom. Jam-packed with nearly 60 levels hailing from Knee Deep in the Dead, The Shores of Hell, Inferno, Doom 2, and Thy Flesh Consumed, and overhauled with new sound effects, music, and lighting, it's no wonder why this version is fondly remembered by the community. With all of these changes taking place, I figured this would be the perfect excuse for me to talk about Doom on my channel. It would be a lot of fun to review and pick apart the differences in PlayStation Doom. Yeah, that's it. So sit back and grab your super shotgun as we compare the PlayStation Custom Edition of Doom to the originals to see what's the difference. A couple quick things before I get on with this breakdown. First, for those of you familiar with my channel, yes, this is a rebranding of my Dare to Compare series. For a while, I've wanted to change the name to better illustrate what the series is about, as previous episodes have caused confusion. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Besides, I feel this name better fits the show. And second, unlike previous episodes, I'm going to structure this breakdown a little differently. The first section will cover general game changes, the second part will include my overall thoughts on each game, and the third will go level by level for closer inspection. Speaking of, for this inspection, I'll be using the PlayStation Doom Total Conversion for GZ Doom, as it's an accurate recreation of the PlayStation game, and it allows me to play with my preferred method, keyboard and mouse. I will note the few not so accurate changes in the Total Conversion, like the inclusion of the arch file, when I come across them, but these inaccuracies are few and far between. Of course, we play on ultra-violence here because, well, I ain't no chump, and we have to see everything the game has to offer. And lastly, as to not drive myself mad, this video will focus solely on Doom 1 and Doom 2 levels. I'll leave it for a future episode to take a look at the PlayStation port of Final Doom that includes TNT, Plutonia, and Master level maps. I'm also leaving out the Thy Flesh Consumed maps from this breakdown as I haven't spent nearly as much time with that WOD as I have the originals. And with that, let's get slaying. Right off the bat, or should I say chainsaw, the most noticeable change to PlayStation Doom is the eye-catching dynamic lighting. This feature really adds some extra atmosphere that I think is lost on the originals with their fairly flat lighting. Not to mention it helps mask some of the more lackluster textures. Dimly lit corridors now sprawl across many levels, and certain areas now radiate an almost Suspiria-like energy with stark red, green, and other colored glows. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, for as pretty as it looks, it also manages to hide many deadly foes a little too well, especially hit scanners. There were far too many instances where I would walk into a room or even just open a door and suddenly I'm being turned into Swiss cheese by enemies I can't even see. The lighting, or lack thereof, can really turn what would be an easy level into an unfair challenge. And yes, I messed around with the settings to no avail, and I swear the footage isn't doing it justice as it's way darker when you're actually playing it. You know, if I wanted to shoot at monsters I can't see, I'd just play Doom 3. So if I'm being honest, the lighting, while neat, is rather hit or miss depending on the level. But let's move on to some positives, and that is of course the revamped sound. PlayStation Doom decided to ditch the iconic sounds we all know and love. which might seem like heresy, but the incredible Aubrey Hodges took a microphone straight to the icon of sin himself and produced some
certified hood classic.
Chilling ambiences now haunt every level, and it increases the tension tenfold. Seriously, his tracks don't disappoint. And as someone who wasn't too keen on the idea initially, I have to say, in some cases, these tracks work better than the Metallica, Pantera, and Alice in Chains midis that I hold so dear to me. The monster sounds have been equally polished, ditching the camel grunts and pig squeals for some new and disturbing battle cries. Then we have the weapon sounds, and for many I can see this being the tipping point, but once again, Hodges knocks it out of the park, making them beefier and meatier than ever. Look, I love that iconic super shotgun sound as much as the next guy, but get a load of this. On top of that, all of these sounds are peppered with various reverbs supplied by the PlayStation hardware, making for a more immersive aural experience. To the delight of many, some of the larger and more tedious maps like Slough of Despair, Downtown, and The Chasm have been cut from the game entirely, while others have been trimmed down mostly due to space limitations. This results in a better paced and more pleasant experience in my book. But I have to question the inclusion of certain levels like Limbo in the Factory. Like, come on guys, you couldn't have taken those out while you were at it? But they haven't just cut levels, in some cases they've actually added a few, which I'll touch more upon when I get to them. Stages aren't the only subtraction, as a few enemies got the axe as well. By some divine design choice, the rectum-pounding meatball of endless suffering, the Pain Elemental, has been mostly scrubbed clean of this port, aside from a brief appearance in a few Doom 1 levels and a grand total of 1 level in Doom 2. Another collective sigh of relief was breathed when everyone found out the Archvile wasn't going to be resurrecting the dead or spitting fire in your face in this port either. This was due to old Archie having twice as many frames as other monsters, which required a lot of space that they didn't have. Now I know I'm in the minority on this one, but I must admit I was quite sad about this cut, as I think Archviles are a ton of fun to play against. Thankfully, this total conversion adds some of them back in for extra challenge. And with that, let's get to Doom. This may seem like a sin, but Doom is not exactly my favorite of the bunch. I'm more of a Doom 2 kind of guy. But Doom set the foundation and undeniably has its charms and its highs. But I think those charms are kind of lost amongst the slough of levels found throughout. To me, a lot of the maps lack that character found in many Doom 2 levels, and because of that, more than a few start to blend together. This rings especially true for Doom's iconic opening episode. Not to mention, the crushing lengths that some of these maps encompass really brings the late game to a crawl. Thankfully, the PlayStation port remedies both of these issues with the fancy new lighting and by cutting the fat from many of the levels. Although in certain cases, some maps feel like they've been neutered rather than trimmed down. New details in mind, you might be shocked to find a handful of Doom 2 monsters in Doom 1 levels, which is a welcome addition as it brings more variety and strategy to the table. Not to mention that if you put in the right code, you could bring along a super shotgun for your first trip through hell. Or at least you can in the total conversion. This is a huge plus in my book, as I find it rather hard to go back to those elongated bouts with Pinkies and Cacodemons after being spoiled by Doom 2. Although, it's no problem that a chainsaw can't fix. While this may seem like cheating, I guess it is, I just put in a cheat code, but since the levels now include Doom 2 monsters, it's only fair that you can wield Doom 2 weapons to cut them down. With these small yet substantial changes, this definitely cements PlayStation Doom as my preferred take on this FPS classic. And without further ado, let's dive in. The classic E1M1 is just that, a classic. It's not particularly inventive or challenging, as you can plow through it in mere seconds, but it sets up the game perfectly with a few small fights against imps and gunners and includes some telltale secrets. In short, it's an excellent first level. The PlayStation port is unsurprisingly not very different. Although the pillars in the shotgunner room have been removed, the blue floor at the start is just a plain floor texture, and a few chain gunners have found their way alongside the rest of the normal occupants of this level. Real quick before moving on, there will be a handful of enemy changes in these levels, and while I will point out the obvious ones, for brevity's sake, I'll ignore some of the lesser, at least for Doom 1 maps. Nuclear Plant, or Plant as it's been shortened to in the PlayStation version, is another fun level. It sprawls out more than Hangar and introduces some new enemies like the Pinkies and Spectres, or at least it does in the PlayStation port. Speaking of, it looks fantastic on the PlayStation with some new textures and lights, but it's also the first level to teach you how deadly those dark areas can get. Especially this maze section with the strobing lights where you'll be waiting for them to come back on so you can see your way and your foes. The changes are minimal but include an additional room with a chain gunner that replaces the ledge that this armor was on. As I said earlier, we have a few specters roaming around, and the exit room no longer has the little elevator hiding the imp. If you ask me, this is the first real map in Doom. The training wheels come off as the start is no joke with the imps, shotgunners, and pinkies just waiting to take you out the second you open the door. And from there the chaos continues as many hordes await you around every turn. Aside from being dark, maybe a little too dark, the level has one major change, and it's the design of the acid pool room. You no longer have to tread carefully around the menacing rim of this high platform while dodging foes, as it's just a normal platform instead, making this room an absolute breeze. If I'm being honest, from this level until Phobos Anomaly, all of the maps kinda start to blend together. But the two standout sections in this map are the opening with the snipers in the windows and the claustrophobic tunnel system designed to sandwich you between enemies. And the port keeps that MO going, and lets you know it's not messing around by introducing the meatball from hell, the Pain Elemental. That's right, by level 4 you're going up against Pain Elementals. Listen, I'm not one to scare easily as I love horror movies and such, but I'll admit, there was a little bit of oh no in my soul when I was fumbling through this dark maze and came face to face with this guy. Aside from the meatballs, you'll find that this is the first level where there are some noticeable cuts, all of which were ported over from the Jaguar version that this game's source code is based on. From the start, the middle computer room has been cut, and an additional window has been added in its place. Also, the swastika has been altered to be, well, less racist. Phobos Lab is what I consider a good breather after command and control and before central processing. It gives you ample opportunities to pick off upcoming fights like this room full of hit scanners and acid, or here where you get the yellow key. The only areas that might make you sweat are this gaggle of monsters, or in this dark room of pinkies, hit scanners, and imps. Overall, it's a good level and one I always look forward to playing again. It's also devoid of any noticeable changes besides a few chain gunners and it being dark as hell. This can be a mean map if you're not ready for it, so I hope you've stocked up on bullets, especially with its maze section. Thank God it can be skipped. And this evil trap towards the end with the shotgunners and Pinky Swarm. The only noticeable change in this level is right from the get-go. The red key area with the surprise entourage of monsters has been stripped out. Instead, the red key is just kind of uneventfully sitting there. Computer Station is an excellent penultimate level to Doom's first episode. The gangling hallways are packed full of surprises, plenty of which won't be afraid to snipe you from across the level, through windows, or from second-story alcoves. So you better be quick on your feet, especially if you want to avoid these spooky boys' homing missiles. Yep, now we have to contend with revenants. Thankfully, their speed has been nerfed, so you don't have to dance quite as well as you do on the PC. That being said, other than our skeletal friend, this level remains unchanged. Phobos Anomaly, the first boss level in Doom. The one where everybody was like, oh shit, there's two Satans? Honestly, this level is a piece of cake once you've taken care of all the specters and can unleash rockets on the Barons without worrying about accidentally blowing yourself away. For such a short level, there are a surprising number of changes. The level quite literally starts out with a bang, a very abrupt and kind of funny one. Notice that the pool of acid has been replaced with a platform and now contains more than just pinkies. Man, does this level truly shine with the hellish red glow that envelops the pentagram room. It really sets the right mood. Notice here that the two monster closets are conjoined in this version, even on the inside where you'll find a soul sphere. You also get the advantage of being able to take out the specters before the doors open up, which is not the case in the original. After downing the barons, only one end of the room opens as opposed to all sides. And finally, the level exit no longer teleports you to your death, but acts as a normal exit. Instead of taking away all of your weapons and making you choose a new game, the PlayStation version sends you straight into Deimos Anomaly, and it does not disappoint. This is easily my favorite opening level in Doom 1, as it kicks things right off, so be sure to grab your trusty shotgun and some ammo to deal with the crowd ASAP. Plenty of zombie men, shotgunners, and imps are just waiting to get a taste, and it's wholly satisfying to lay them all out. Man, does this level have an excellent flow. It's not overly complicated nor long. It's just the right length with just the right amount of combat. The level has been left intact for the port aside from the addition of this Hell Knight and the texturing, which is less than stellar, as the sleek black walls and tech-based flourishes have been replaced with a lot of ugly brown walls instead. But the giant inverted cross has never looked as menacing as it does on the PlayStation with its eerie red outline. After something like Deimos Anomaly, Containment Area is a poor follow-up, as that all-important flow from the last map is lost. The box mazes are a creative gimmick, but make for a lousy time as it's pretty easy to lose yourself in the clutter. Not to mention the overall lack of ammo throughout. The level does start to open up in the second half, but it still ends up being a chore to get through. Thankfully, the PlayStation port trims things down for a more pleasant experience. The overall size of the box maze has been shrunken as a portion east of where you start has been scrapped, but be on the watch out for revenants as they'll pop out from behind a crate or two while you pass through. The blue rooms with the electric floors are gone, which is fine by me as they never really felt like they belonged anyways. The section towards the back of the level has had quite the makeover. To the left of this fork used to be the yellow key room with the rising floor. In its place is now the blue key room that leads back to the hallway. This means the annoying crusher section near the red door is also gone. The yellow key's new home is off in this room with the Doom equivalent of the choose and lose. Heading back to the fork, going straight will still take you to the open room, which is now full of monsters, but those weird lifts and ammo stashes are absent. Lastly, this is a minute change, but after pressing the switch in the red key room, you can simply go out the window instead of taking the long way. This overgrown jungle ruins is sure to give you a run for your money if you aren't properly equipped. From the opening barrage with the caged cacos in front of you, the hidden imps to your left, and the room full of monsters to your right who aren't afraid to find the action, this level is bursting with demons. Beyond that, you'll be met with plenty of resistance like groups of pinkies and imps, and this Baron of Hell who's so excited to see you he accidentally murders his cohorts. I will admit that this level is a little long, but still enjoyable. Over on the PS1, the level's been cleaned up a bit as the overgrowth is gone, and so is the cage that bars these cacos. Later on in the level, the moving floor tiles in this room are no more, but say hello to the arachnotron that's here instead. As for changes, I believe that's it. Deimos Lab is a large map done right. Full of nukage pools, winding hallways, and wild skirmishes, it's a blast to come back to with all of its various traps. I particularly like the fight in this room where you can crush your foes if you play your cards right. Do be careful towards the end as the multiple barons and in particular this flock of cacos can put a serious halt to your progress if handled poorly. While the level itself is still the same, the PS1 version does make some changes. Because the Jaguar port omitted all of the crushers in the game, that awesome fight I loved isn't quite as entertaining this go around. Not to mention that without the crusher, the switch on the wall is effectively rendered useless. The same goes for the crusher section following the blue key, as well as the yellow key trap, which has at least been replaced with this monster closet. Lastly, the winding stair section, where you can get the jump on this Pinky and Kako, has ditched the stairs and is now just a part of the ground floor. Command Center is a real bruiser. From the second you open that first door, you'll be treated to a small squad of foes ready to put you down. And that sets the tone for the rest of the level, as every room after that has some new trick up its sleeve, like this massacre that turns into a rematch of Phobos Anomaly, or the countless rooms where you'll take one step and be thrust amongst a massive monster closet. And that isn't too bad once you're accustomed to it, but the gimmick of having all of the rooms hidden behind switches makes for a confusing and laborious trip. In the end, this is a map I could do without. On the PlayStation side of things, some weight has been shed, but I guess they must have thought we hadn't suffered enough, as after that equally ruthless opening, you'll find a pain elemental amongst the crowd. You'll also find one just vibing near the exit. I did notice that this room and the nukage pool it leads to have been cut out, as was this area with the caged imps and Baron, as well as this secret plasma pickup section. Halls of the Damned. I know this map is widely disliked by a handful of people for a number of reasons, but I don't seem to mind it all that much. For the majority of this map, you'll be dealing with close quarters battles, while the other half is fought in the dark. Sprinkle in a handful of ruthless traps, and you have yourself a good approximation of Halls of the Damned. And while I don't love it, as I said earlier, I don't mind it either. I kind of like the dark section, and I have to say I'm always a little nervous when I don't know where those Barons have wandered off to. Overall, it's a decent map that I think overstates its welcome by just a little. So how does the PlayStation treat this one? You know, the map where the dark as hell lighting would be excusable? I can't believe this, but they've brightened the entire section. I can see everything just fine in the section that's supposed to be in the dark. It kind of feels like a practical joke. Besides the lighting, you'll find a few revenants stalking the halls. New enemies aside, the big differences in this level are towards the end. Both of these crowded hallways are a little roomier on the PlayStation. At the fork, 3 of the 4 paths you would normally have to choose from have been removed, so your odds of finding the yellow key are quite high. And that notorious fake exit trap is no more. Spawning vats is yet another favorite of mine. This massive base spans many memorable sections, including this room of Pinkies, who you can either cut down with your chainsaw or risk getting the berserk to deal with. How about the blue key section, where I like to get the Baron and Kakos to infight each other? Or this onfall of imps with a lone Baron way in the back. As you can see, there's a lot of carnage to dish out here. Over on the PlayStation, things have changed quite a bit. So much so that despite being the same level, it's kind of hard to compare the two as the feel is very different. The original has this neat aesthetic of a chemical plant that at times feels as if it borders on a hellish volcano, while the PlayStation version takes on a boundless medieval castle design stuck in a hellscape that is more akin to what you might find in Doom 64. Because of that, every hall seethes an oppressive feeling of what can only be described as doom. And with it, every fight just feels merciful, whether you're gunning down that Baron and his army of imps, or you're picking off a Mancubus in the long shadowy walkways beneath the blood-red sky. I'm definitely partial to the PlayStation version, not only for its design, but for the slightly smaller scale, which lends itself to a better overall flow. And the addition of the Doom 2 enemies gives it some extra flair. Either way, it's a fantastic level you don't want to miss out on. Of course, there are some differences. The original starting room has been scrapped and you now start in this hall. The aforementioned Pinky Room and infighting section have been cut too. So has the room with the Kako Demon in it in this section with the yellow key, as well as the room of imps right by the red key. Besides just cutting sections, a new one was added in this hallway that houses some goodies and a Mancubus. From spawning vats, you would typically end up in Episode 2's final level, Tower of Babel. And while the level hasn't been cut from this port, it now resides at the end of Episode 3, so we'll talk about it then. Starting off what would be Episode 3 is an entirely new level, Hellgate. But its overall concept is essentially just a retread of the secret level, Fortress of Mystery, as you're better off letting the monsters infight your way to victory. That being said, it's still a fun little distraction of a map. While this map may share the same name as Doom's first level of Episode 3, this is yet again a completely different map. Despite that, the beginning still resembles that of the PC level, with this dried out courtyard, 2 packs of ammo, and a caco just waiting for you behind the door. From there, you'll have to contend with some imps in this divide, a glutton of cacos, pinkies, and some wandering revenants in this lava room, and you'll finish off with a small courtyard siege or two. This concise battle map shakes things up, has a good flow to it, and makes for a nice addition. As for the PC version of Hellkeep, it's a level I can do without. I mean, do you really want to pistol these caco demons to death and then do the same for a bunch of pinkies? Yeah, me neither. What an apt name. Slough of Despair is a chore to get through if you don't know where to go. Add in the labyrinthian design with tons of lost souls, shotgunners, and pinkies tucked away in every corner, and you have yourself a middling level. Thankfully, those enjoying the PlayStation edition won't suffer through this onslaught of gray. And yes, I know this level is just a giant hand. Honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't just a middle finger. Pandemonium is a divisive map between the ports. On PC, it kind of evokes that feeling that PlayStation spawning vats gives off, with a hellish medieval castle vibe. There's also plenty of long winding hallways with fresh demons just waiting for you. Overall, it's a good map with a few fights that will keep you on your toes. Over on the PlayStation, a good portion of this level has been omitted, but it seems the hellspawn that occupied those areas have been crammed into this truncation, making for a difficult start as the demons in this sector are instantly alerted to your presence when you take care of the starting threat. Beyond that, the level feels a bit awkward at times as some rooms don't lead into the next as organically as they once did. Does it ruin the level? No. Actually, it's still a lot of fun, but I can't say that either version is better than the other. They're both just not perfect. So what changes did the PlayStation make? From the start, the section to your left has been sealed, so say goodbye to this section with the acid and narrow building that leads to this room with the Baron. Heading straight, you'll find this room has received a slight redesign and a handful of enemies, including a Hell Knight who wasn't there before. Also, the flesh section where the blue key used to be is gone, and the blue key now resides in this room. Here we have it, the worst level in Doom, House of Pain. I'll admit that the first half with the Pinky Nest near the start, the Crusher Room, and the long hallway that splits 3 ways isn't too bad. But from the blue door onwards, the level comes to a crawl with one annoying arena after another. Not to mention the terrible switch puzzle and the hallway of demons with the damaging floor. In short, it's a level I remember for all of the wrong reasons. Honestly, the level would be far more tolerable without those aspects. Thankfully, we don't have to imagine this as the PlayStation port does the work for us. A lot of the tedium has been cut. The start of the level is essentially the same, but with an awesome new skybox. Also, the room off to the right has had a slight redesign. The cool room with the crushers is skipped entirely as this teleporter takes you right to the big hallway. That extra ambush of pinkies and shotgunners that opens right here has been removed in the port. Instead of dealing with that horrid puzzle switch, the red key is now waiting for you in the bear instead. Moving ahead through the uncooperative door is a completely new section sporting a couple of barons guarding the yellow key and a monster closet of imps and cacos. Good stuff, way better than the original. Speaking of annoying puzzles, how about Unholy Cathedral? It's nowhere near as tedious as House of Pain, but the teleporter gimmick in this map is pretty annoying. But once you figured it out, the level lends itself to some neat fights, including multiple in the sizable courtyard, and an optional all-out war right at the end. Not many changes here, but some pillars have been removed in the courtyard, an extra baron guards the hallway near the blue key, and this room is equipped with doors to unleash the demons instead of them all teleporting in. Mount Erebus is an unforgiving bloodbath of a level. This spacious lake of fire will pit you against many hordes of Cacos and Lost Souls, an armory of shotgunners, and multiple buildings spilling with monstrous hosts. And by the end, be prepared to take a dip in the lava to find your way out. This level's almost village-like design work really brings to mind future levels like downtown and the suburbs. And that's not a bad thing, as it makes for a nice change of pace late in Doom 1. It should come as no surprise that the PlayStation version is significantly smaller. That lake of fire? Well, it's a lot closer to a moat of fire in this version. And because of that, the water section with the teleporter and the secret exit has been scrapped, alongside a handful of monster closets. Without that section, the latter half of the level is handled quite differently. You'll take this teleporter, which I might note is on the opposite side of the room than it's normally on, and you'll find yourself outside this building. Inside, you'll find a yellow key after dealing with its usual occupants. From there, the key will open this teleporter that takes you to the normal blue key building. I also found an extra mancubus amongst this nest of foes. Aside from that, the rest of the level is much of the same. Gate to Limbo, or simply Limbo as it's called on the PS1, was a map I remember hating a lot more on previous playthroughs. Hell, I even bashed it earlier in this video. But this time around, I found it more tolerable. It definitely helps playing the level back to back a couple of times, so you know your way around the frustrating acid puzzles. But aside from that, I remember the level being way bigger and housing even more enemies. The start is still a high-stakes battle if handled incorrectly, as is this closet of lost souls and pinkies, but you have ample room to move around, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. The same goes for this nest of Cacos. Outside of those 3 fights, the level is surprisingly barren. You just have to deal with the lousy damaging floor sections. Over on the PlayStation, Limbo is almost identical, with the exception of one of the forks in the red key maze being removed. Normally, after making your way through Limbo, you'd end up in Doom's letdown of a final map, Dis. As in, this is some bullshit. But as I mentioned earlier, Episode 2's final map, Tower of Babel, has taken its place, which means it's time to come face to face with Mr. Cybe himself. The 2 maps are nearly identical, but I've gotta give it to the PlayStation version with its faint orange glow and hellfire in the sky that ratchets up the atmosphere. Not only that, be prepared to dodge more than just rockets and lost souls, but mancubus projectiles as well. Upon destroying the cyber demon, the level will no longer just end, but instead an exit will open. And from there you'll be thrown into the Thy Flesh Consumed levels, which we'll save for another day. Now, on to the sequel. Doom 2, the sequel that only got better. With its larger cast of demons to put a new spin on encounters, its new and treacherous levels, and its inclusion of double the shotgun barrels, there's no wondering why this game has endured for so long. It's hard to say, but it might just be my favorite in the classic series, coming just ahead of Doom 64. Unlike the first game, most of Doom 2's levels have remained relatively unchanged, but as we go along, we'll still have a good amount to compare. That being said, because we don't have the crazy level redesigns of Doom 1, I'll be more poignant about the enemy changes this go around. And with that, let's get to it. Or should I say, let's go to it. Much like Doom's E1M1, Entryway is just as iconic. It's short and simple, but has just the right amount of action to kick things off. Although I do wish they'd given you a bit more ammo, so you don't have to be so stingy as to not run yourself dry of munitions a couple levels down the line. But other than that, it's a great map that sets you up with a nice haul of weapons for the slaughter that awaits. The differences here are quite small. At the start, the fence texture has been replaced by a window, giving us a nice view of this courtyard. Other than that, everything is intact, including the secret shotgun and rocket launcher. Underhalls is a strange level for me. It's not one I particularly love, but I don't hate it either. I mean, how can you hate the map that famously introduces the one-stop shop, demon-slaying god amongst guns, the Super Shotgun? And thanks to its inclusion, the level ends up having a really good flow that keeps me from being entirely underwhelmed by underhauls. Once again, the PlayStation version remains largely unchanged here, which is a continued trend for these first few levels, but we'll have some things to look at soon. The Gauntlet, and yes, that's how it's pronounced according to John Romero, is a great map. From the first few halls filled with shotgunners and zombies, to the unrelenting ambush of imps and chain gunners, the Gauntlet lets you know what you're in for. Just be sure your trigger finger is ready as to not let those chain gunners get the drop on you or let the pinkies nab a bite. I have to note that the excellent lighting really pulls this map together on the PlayStation. Outside of that, the level is identical to its PC counterpart. This is the first level in Doom 2 where the dynamic lighting really hinders the player. The focus opens up with a rough start for those unprepared, with its smorgasbord of shotgunners and chain gunners all lurking in the dark, making it quite difficult to pick them off. Same goes for this pitch black hallway. And yes, I realize this hallway was dark in the original game, but it's 10 times worse here. Even with the lights on, I can barely make out the end of this hall. Lighting aside, I do like this level as it offers some really good firefights. There are a few changes here. These steel grates in these windows are gone, and the window facing the blue key is a little bigger in the PlayStation version for whatever reason. I also noticed you can squeeze between these two barrels in this secret, unlike the original. Further along in the yellow key room, one of the specters is just a regular pinky now, and the surprise pinky in the exit room is now absent. The waste tunnels is a drawn-out hit-scan hellscape that is not pleasing to look at or play through. Filled with annoying little traps like falling ground tiles and rooms full of gunners, it's not one I like revisiting. I think the only thing it has going for it is the outside design that is sort of reminiscent of levels done way better in Doom 64. Yet again, this is another level that has remained intact. Now we're talking. The Crusher is the first level I truly love in Doom 2, as it really feels like a level that has been fleshed out as much as it can. It starts off quite rough with a room full of shotgunners and the spooky skeletal boy that is the Revenant. After that, you're quickly introduced to the level's namesake, whose room is lined with imps waiting to snipe you. And from there, the spectacles keep coming, like this final teleporter room that leads to quite a deadly battle. Overall, it is packed to the brim with action. The differences are quite noticeable here, as the Crusher room has a distinct lack of verticality to save space on the PlayStation. This ends up giving the room a very different and less frantic feel. Notice that the Spider Mastermind has been replaced with a bunch of Hell Knights. In the lava room, towards the end of the level, the Hell Knight that would be here has been swapped for 3 Spectres, and the Hell Knights in the teleporter room are either missing entirely or replaced with a few extra enemies. This is another level that really benefits from that excellent lighting. Although the opening room has received a noticeable spike in difficulty thanks to the darkness. Another iconic first for a Doom game is Dead Simple. With its glut of mancubuses, mancubi? I'm going with mancubi. With its glut of mancubi that you have to gun down before the walls drop to reveal a nest of arachnotrons is always a tense yet boisterous challenge. The only differences here are a few texture changes, like the fleshy eye switch that ends the level. Other than that, there's not much you could change here, as the map is perfect in its delivery of a frantic and frenzied showdown of chubby proportions. Tricks and Traps is a real mean bastard of a level, as it truly lives up to its name. Each room in this circle holds a fight that'll either make or break you, so be prepared to deal with swarm after deadly swarm of many variety. If I'm being honest, this is a map I don't look forward to upon replays, as I find the gimmick more obnoxious than fun. It also drags on just a little too long, and the absolutely evil falling walkway to the exit has ended many a saveless runs. This level has a few changes, including this room full of pinkies, which has been changed to a bunch of imps, and the room with the cacodemons, pinkies, and pain elementals is less of a threat this time around, as the pain elementals are absent and the pinkies are once again swapped for imps. The pit is one of those levels you either love or hate, and while I don't hate it, I certainly don't love it with its abundance of pain elementals and fair share of evil traps. If I'm being honest, every time I get to the pit, I always feel ill-equipped to deal with the many situations. And that scenario doesn't couple well with the fact that this level will chew through your ammo if you're not careful. Although I must admit the PlayStation version of the level is far more tolerable. The 6 or 7 pain elementals that haunt this stage are thankfully gone. In the titular pit room, which is more or less a hole in this version, the 2 pain elementals are cacodemons instead. The same goes for the ones in this room. In the yellow key room, they haven't been completely cleaned out as these lost souls act as stand-ins. Gone are all of the Mancubus, and instead we have Revenants, which is not exactly a change for the better. And a few Hell Knights like the one in the blue key room and the one in the last room have been changed to chain gunners. Other than that, the level still plays out much like the original. If the pit didn't deplete your firepower, then refueling base will. This absolute behemoth of a level is stuffed with a whopping 300 hellspawn waiting to take you down. In just the first area, you'll be met with an endless supply of imps, zombies, and shotgunners, and around every turn and door awaits creatures like arachnotrons, pinkies, revenants, goddamn flying meatballs, an entire room full of hit scanners, and to cap it all off, a teleporting cyber demon guards the exit. This map is either a blast or a bummer, depending on how well you've managed your resources up to this point, as you'll need every last bullet and cell pack to see it through to the end. Thankfully, there is some rest for the wicked in its PlayStation counterpart, as all of the pain elementals are now cacos. The room with the pinkies and lost souls is at half capacity. The revenant in the adjacent room has been swapped for some extra flying tomatoes. There's only one arachnotron in this room with the imps. A caco has been added to this offshoot full of imps and lost souls. And what awaits you at the level exit is no longer Mr. Cybicide, but 4 arachnotrons in his place. This is what I'm talking about. Circle of Death, or as it's been changed to, O of Destruction, is a contender for one of my favorite maps in Doom 2. Starting right off, you're met with a couple of cacos, shotgunners, and chain gunners who will run you right off the circle if you don't stand your ground. With bullets. Explosions. Couple that with a serving of flying meatballs best fed by plasma or BFG shots, some specters patrolling tight ledges, and some arachnotrons guarding this wicked-looking courtyard where you'll come face to face with the demon that clenches butt cheeks with the drop of a single sound. And fire. The Archvile. Talk about a great introduction. The level doesn't exactly build up to it, it just lets it happen, but pulls the smart move of putting it in a room where it's less likely to get out, giving you ample cover from its devastating attack. Aside from the Archvile, Circle of Death is just a well-paced battle map that perfectly varies in enemy type and level design. The changes in this map aren't big, but are as follows. The pain elementals that will ambush you here are instead cacos. The courtyard is patrolled by one less arachnotron, the other has taken the Archvile's place in the wooden cylinder guarding the blue key. The Hell Knight waiting behind the blue door is absent. In the red key room, they've replaced the 3 Barons of Hell in this pit of acid with 3 chain gunners instead, and completely discarded the Revenant that once haunted this ledge. And they've removed the Lost Souls and Cacodemons from this area leading towards the exit. Next up is the factory, or at least I think it is, because I can't fucking see. They've shrouded the entire outside section in darkness for the port. Anyways, the factory is an absolute slog of a map. The outside feels vacant apart from the handful of arachnotrons, and the inside portions are bland, flat, and boring. Blow through this chungus of Macubi, deal with this horrible room of shotgunners, and dodge an endless stream of fireballs in this strange cacodemon room. Then in the PlayStation version, do all of this with 75% less light. This is an abysmal level that feels uninspired, and it certainly left me that way. It's a shame that PSX didn't make any changes to this level, as maybe they could have fixed it. Maybe. As I mentioned before, Downtown has been cut from the PlayStation version due to space limitations, which makes its inclusion in the Game Boy Advanced port all the more impressive. Like, how the hell did they fit this entire game on a tiny cartridge, but not the PlayStation? It's crazy. I might have to talk about that port someday. Back on the PlayStation, there's no need to deal with Downtown's sprawling layout and trivial key hunts. But I'll admit that I'm actually a fan of the level, flaws and all. Sure, it can be a nightmare to navigate at times, but the intense battle that ensues upon starting the level always gets my blood pumping, so I'm kind of sad that it's been cut. The Inmost Dens is another solid level in my book. While it may be overrun with an abundance of mischievously placed hit scanners, the fort-like layout lends itself to some interesting combat encounters. Most notably, the final one where a courtyard of hit scanners guards an archvile, making for quite the challenge if not handled correctly. The PSX variant ditches a few small things like the Arachnotron guarding this soul sphere, it's a specter in this version, and the archvile towards the end. I have to say, the lighting in this level left a lot to be desired. It's just kinda dark. Nothing really flashy, which is a shame considering it's sort of reminiscent of the Gauntlet, which got a nice overhaul. The hit scan hell zone that is Industrial Zone is no more. And yet again, I'm a little disappointed. I enjoy this map for the crazy cleanup job that you have to do right from the start. It almost has a Duke Nukem 3D feel to it, and that's always a plus. While I may not be too crazy about this section towards the end, I do like the wooden building full of foes and this particularly evil pickup right here with the two Cacos, the Pain Elemental, and the Baron. It's a real tense fight that always has me on the edge of my seat. Good map. I wish it had made the cut. The Suburbs is frantic, exhilarating, crammed with awesome fight after awesome fight, and is my favorite level in all of Doom 2. John Romero described Doom 2 as,
Doom 2 is just such a bigger, badder, better version of Doom.
And Suburbs perfectly encapsulates that to me. From the start, where you'll be dealing with a few revenants before being taken by surprise by this roaming archvile, which is the perfect way to reintroduce it, since the last few times it was confined to a small room and now it has free range. Then having to gun down a nest of imps, and before you know it, you're dealing with a massive assailment of Hellspawn, making for one hell of a memorable battle. The Suburbs is just a brutal all-out slugfest that will put all of the Doom knowledge you've learned up to this point to the test, like how well you've learned all of the new enemy patterns, what target you should make a priority in each situation, and how you'll best handle each battle. And if you know your stuff, then this map is unbelievably satisfying and rewarding, especially when you get the army of demons to start infighting to thin out the crowd. Of course, the map still packs a punch once the demon horde is gone, as to exit the level, you have to set free some revenants and pinkies before dealing with this ambush of imps. Unfortunately, the PlayStation version loses a little bit of its muster by omitting the two archviles, but it at least replaces them with revenants. And the massive battle in the town still delivers on all fronts. Other than that, the level remains largely unchanged. Tenements is a decent romp. I like the dark and eerie starting area, especially the cool room with the red key that leads to a mean trap of imps and cacodemons. The second section with the three forks in the road houses its own set of trials that retain the map's difficulty, like the blue key section with all of the cacos and meatballs, and the acid pit section that I think drags the level out a bit too long. Overall, it has its moments of friction and fun, and it's a level I don't mind playing through upon revisiting the game. We have a few enemy changes in this one, like the Baron of Hell in this area has been snubbed for a cacodemon. In the red key room, the shotgunners that usually accompany these cacos are instead chain gunners, making this trap even spookier. In the room with the acid pit, you'll find a chain gunner in place of the Arachnotron. In this crevice, you'd usually find a pain elemental, but now we have another tomato. The revenant that normally mans this watchtower makes way for yet another cacodemon. Man, they really love these things. The archvile hiding in this cage near the end of the level is gone, and some chain gunners stand in for the arachnotron that is waiting for you atop of this lift. The courtyard starts off rather unassuming with this mob of imps, but before you know it, you are in an all-out massacre as the courtyard floods with demons. Either grab your heaviest weapons and go to town, or out with the crowd into killing each other. Regardless, you are sure to have an absolute bloodshed on your hands. Talk about a killer map. It's like you took Dead Simple and turned it up to 11. Much like Dead Simple, there isn't much to change here, and the only thing I noticed was that the mancubus that comes out of this wooden pillar is absent. The Citadel is a map I just don't like. The fights aren't very interesting aside from the barrage in the center room. The medieval castle design, while neat in concept, doesn't translate well as the layout is confusing with its focus on secret passages and teleporter puzzles. Every time I play this level, I can't shake the thought of how much better this style of map was pulled off in Doom 64, and that I'd much rather be playing that instead. Not too many differences here outside of the missing arachnotrons that usually walk the moat and fire upon you in the center room. In both cases, PlayStation Doom does what it knows best and replaces them with cacos. Yet another map cut from the PlayStation edition, and it's a shame too as you miss out on a battle for the ages. The Spider Mastermind versus the Cyber Demon. Alright, place your salty bets. Who's winning? I'm going with Cyber Demon. Hell yeah! Other than that, you miss out on some grueling firefights and some neat secrets. A literal game changer, a zeitgeist if you will. One that happened to resonate with people the world over, and as a matter of fact, they're my favorite band of all time. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the level. Unlike most people, I don't hate myself and want to die when I play this map. Yeah, I'm a part of that weird breed that doesn't mind it as a whole. The beginning section with the shotgunners and revenants isn't so bad if you're prepped for it, and what follows makes for an amusing challenge to see if you can take out this small horde of demons without getting a scratch on you. And while the section with the islands makes me want to stay away from this one, I can't say it's a complete downer, as it's at least short. Alright, enough with the Nirvana puns, let's dive into the differences. There's not a lot to cover here, but I did notice that the mancubi in this squabble are revenants instead, as is this mancubus that would be on the island in the back of this room. It's worth noting that the Pain Elemental's only appearance in a PSX Doom 2 level is in this trap right here, which is where they would normally be in the game. And they actually took the time to fix the blue key door, so you in fact need the key this time around. The Catacombs is not exactly my idea of fun, from the multitude of hit scanners and scenarios where you're thrust amongst them and hope to survive. The extreme beginning where you have to act fast or die by the hands of chain gunners and revenants, coupled with the unavoidable damaging floors, makes for an annoying time. In a way, it kind of feels like an extension of Nirvana with all of these island-like platforms. On the bright side, the map is pretty short, and with its lack of any major fights, save for this close quarters encounter with a Baron, it's a nice breather, albeit a forgettable one. On the PS1, that hectic start I complained about is less so this time around, as the Revenants have been removed, and that pesky Baron of Hell has been demoted to a Hell Knight. Barrels of Fun is actually a decent gimmick map. As a matter of fact, it's another favorite of mine. Despite being heavy on the pain elementals, I relish in the fierce battles that wash over this level. Whether it be the overabundance of demons that crowd each side of this room, the stampede of pinkies that follow, the tough as nails archvile assault, or the spider demon and her children, every victory feels earned after each diligent fight. I know a handful of people don't particularly get out of this map what I do, but I think the gimmick sticks around for just long enough before giving way to a challenging level full of surprises. If you aren't too keen on the PC variant, you might enjoy the PSX version better with its changes. At the start of the map, the Makivus who typically kickstarts this chain reaction has been substituted with a chain gunner. The lack of pain elementals in this room actually makes this section a piece of cake, as you only have to deal with a few lost souls instead. The Pinkies on Parade don't quite have as much room to move around as this area is no longer terraced like the original. I'll let you all decide whether or not that makes this better or worse because I'm not entirely sure. The pesky Archvile in this alcove has been replaced with a Revenant, which honestly makes this fight way worse. No surprise that the Archvile hanging out with these Revenants is also gone. One of the Arachnotrons that's usually in this room full of Pinkies is missing, and lastly, the Spider Mastermind has mysteriously vanished, although her children still remain and a Revenant takes her place. Yet another cut level, and one I don't actually have much to say about, as when I do play this map, I take the speedrun route to get out of it as fast as possible. The annoying small ledges get old really fast, and the inescapable acid pool in the final room is a real kick in the cacos, if you know what I'm saying. This is the first Doom 2 level that I'm actually glad they cut. I don't know what it is about the last leg of Doom 2, but a handful of these maps start to fall short in many aspects, and Bloodfalls is definitely a part of that. It's not a terrible level, but the fights that inhabit the map aren't as punchy as the ones that have come before it. The skirmish in the Bloodfall courtyard is okay, as is the one towards the end with the Imps and Archvile, but the rest are kinda Like I said, not a terrible level, but not one I'm ever anticipating. The PlayStation version slightly tones down this encounter as the pain elemental has been removed. And notice the addition of these barrels that can help thin the crowd below if used properly. Blow them up and you can still nab that megasphere. The Revenant that's usually perched atop the Bloodfalls is now a chain gunner, and I think a few other chain gunners have been removed from the balcony, but it's so dark that I'm not entirely sure. Right before the final room, the meatballs were a little overcooked, so they've been thrown out and replaced with chain gunners and imps, which honestly is almost equally as evil. And this Archvile wouldn't normally be here in the PlayStation version, so to make up for that, there are a few Hell Knights and chain gunners roaming about. The Abandoned Mines is a step up from Bloodfalls in terms of quality, as the tight, caged-in corridors make for a claustrophobic yet entertaining arena for the forages that ensue. Use it to your advantage to pick off chain gunners and cacos, but be wary that this nook of monsters can also get you if you're not careful, as can this dickishly placed chain gunner. Just be sure to watch your step, as there are plenty of demons to keep you busy on these small ledges while you hunt for the exit. This level has mostly been left intact, but this evil trap to get the blue key has been slightly tweaked. It's now 2 Hell Knights instead of 1 Baron. The Makivus that normally fires shots at you from this corner is now a Hell Knight, as is the other Makivus in the blue key room. And once again, the Baron in this room has been divided into 2 Hell Knights. I find myself struggling to not only describe Monster Condo, but to decide on a consensus about whether or not I like the level. It's got both good and bad elements. On one hand, we have some memorable clashes like this Rubik's Cube of a room that springs new monsters on you multiple times, or these skirmishes sealed away in the opening room like this double trap of shotgunners and chain gunners. But then you have moments like this teleporter puzzle where you're tasked with cleaning this room of Makebai and Revenants, only to go through the teleporter to do it all over again. Also, the map is just kinda ugly. It looks like a 1970s basement with all of its wood paneling. But past its displeasing color palette and occasionally annoying encounters, I think the map is a good ramp up in difficulty and challenge for this late in the game. So overall, I think I might like this level. On to the changes. The stowaway Arachnotron near this chain gun has been turned into a spooky rocket boy. I hope you like dodging Revenant rockets, as that trend continues with this monster closet that also used to be Arachnotrons. The Archvile in this library is gone, but the 4 Hell Knights remain, although 2 of the 3 extra Hell Knights that appear upon picking up the yellow key are missing. That oh-so-annoying room of Make-You-Buy has been toned down on both go-arounds to include 5 barons instead. The pain elementals in this room are gone. What the fuck? The game just went full Plutonia on me. I have no idea what's causing this room to be full of archviles, but it's definitely not supposed to be that way. My only guess is that I think the conversion might be replacing this skewered body texture with archviles for some reason. Anyways, in this room, the pain elementals have been replaced with lost souls, and the only archvile that would have been in this room is not present. The spirit world is a mean level if you're not prepared. As soon as you turn the corner, you're met with imps, pinkies, and pain elementals. And that's not even the worst of it. The opening cavern's hellish maw looks awesome with these volcanic textures and menacing red cracks running across the floor. The imps and pinkies you'll dispatch here are a mere distraction for this tucked away archvile to reveal itself. Soon after, you'll come face to face with a den of spider masterminds and their children. And to exit the level, you'll be met with the terrifying challenge of taking on 2 archviles at once. It's quite a test of a map, and I'm a little disappointed it was cut from the PlayStation edition. Unfortunately, the same goes for John Romero's excellent penultimate level, The Living End. This monstrous climb through hordes of chain gunners, pain elementals, cacodemons, and much more feels earned. Not only must you outlast your foes, but the trappings that come along with them. From this ambush of cacos to this archvile that I completely forgot was here, this map is one that I've really come to appreciate on my most recent playthrough. And it all culminates in a battle atop the mountain with a cyber demon. It's a real shame this level didn't make the cut, but considering how scaled down levels like the Crusher and the Pit were, I can't imagine this one would have turned out well with the restrictions on the console, so maybe it was for the better. Speaking of, the Icon of Sin is a lousy end to a fantastic game. I mean, what else can be said about this annoying, monster-spawning, glorified wall texture of a final boss? It's a real letdown, and the only thing it has going for it is the widely known secret that it's actually John Romero's head on a stick hiding behind that massive demon. And unsurprisingly, it was also cut from the PlayStation port and replaced with Redemption Denied, a brand new ending level exclusive to the port. And it's not that much better. It's very reminiscent of Doom's original ending level in terms of design, but this time you're met with a mob of barons before dueling it out with one last spider demon. Much like the Icon of Sin, it leaves much to be desired, but at the end of the day, at least we got a new Doom level out of it. Holy cow, that was a lot of Doom to go through, but we made it. At least for now, as there's still PlayStation Final Doom and a few unturned stones in this game that I'm saving for another day. So, is PlayStation Doom worth a purchase or even a playthrough? Does it hold its own against its PC counterparts? Simply put, yes. With all of its changes, both bad and good, the PlayStation Custom Edition of Doom more than lives up to the monumental 4-letter name it bears on its cover. And while I can't say I would choose it over the PC version of Doom 2, I would recommend its rendition of Doom 1 to those like myself who aren't Doom purists or aren't as nostalgic towards the classic's original 3 episodes. The same goes for those of you who may be Doom novices. This is a good remix that caters towards a more casual experience. Not to mention, Doom superfans have quite a bit to gnaw at with the handful of new levels and variations on classics they already know. So by all means, give the PlayStation Custom Edition of Doom a shot. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this episode, consider checking out these other videos right here, or even subscribing. Also, if you'd like to throw me a couple of bucks, you can support the show on Patreon.